Back in 2020, in the race to create a vaccine for COVID-19, many drug companies said they wouldn't pursue legal battles with their rivals in the interest of getting shots out to the world. Well, 4 years later, that's all changed, and lawsuits over who discovered what have begun. The US pharmaceutical company Moderna is suing German drug maker BioNTech in London's High Court. Colin has more on what is at stake.
Many of the concepts that made COVID-19 vaccines possible were around long before 2020, but 3 innovations that year helped develop the drugs. For decades, scientists wanted to make a new class of vaccine that would use short lengths of genetic code instead of bits of inactive virus. Messenger RNA, or so-called mRNA, would trick the body to make pieces of a virus, which would then teach the immune system to defeat it. Such a vaccine would be accurate, adjustable, and safe. But early versions produced allergic reactions, and scientists realized that could be avoided by replacing one chemical with another. It was a discovery that would later win a Nobel Prize. Both Moderna and Pfizer-BioNTech licensed it. That was step 1, but mRNA is fragile and it falls apart easily, so the companies built tiny capsules of fat molecules to deliver it. That was step 2. They then had to choose the best part of the COVID-19 virus to target. And Moderna had researched another respiratory disease called MERS, and they identified the spike protein, which grabs onto human cells. They say Pfizer-BioNTech copied that approach too. Both companies deny any wrongdoing and say their discoveries come from their own research. Moderna says it doesn't want to stop Pfizer's vaccine, but it wants royalties from shots that were sold in wealthy countries after March 2022. And that's potentially a lot of money. Both companies' COVID-19 jabs are sold for more than $100 per dose. Pfizer's generated nearly $38 billion in 2022 and $11 billion the following year. In the same period, Moderna's generated $18 billion and nearly $7 billion the next.
The players are working in the same field. Of course, they're working based on the same state-of-the-art, so on published data, documents, articles, and then at some point they may come up with similar technology. And then it's the question who has filed for the patents first, who has the IP and is able to enforce that against others.
One of the big future targets of mRNA vaccine technology is a vaccine for the flu, a market that's expected to more than double over the next decade.
Well, for more on this, we're joined now by Kevin Noonan, who is a lawyer at MBHB, a patent law and intellectual property rights law firm. He joins us from Chicago. Thanks very much for being with us here on Al Jazeera. First of all, can you just give us an idea of exactly what is at stake here? I mean, is this just legal wrangling between pharmaceutical giants, which have already made billions of dollars from this vaccine?
Well, true, but they've also invested billions of dollars to get to the vaccine. I think that's probably what they would tell you. It is very much of a conventional patent lawsuit, which, as your reporter said, who discovered it first, who filed a patent application for it first, will decide who is entitled to the royalties for this. And I'll mention that both companies have said, I mean, Moderna, since they're the plaintiff, have said that they're not seeking an injunction. There's a parallel case in the United States. They're not asking anybody to stop making the vaccine. They're just saying, how do you apportion the value of that and the royalties that they think they're entitled to?
Okay, who goes into this trial in the stronger position?
Well, it's interesting because I looked at the 2 European patents. I'm a U.S. patent lawyer, but I looked at the 2 European patents. Interestingly, they have one that is to the change in the actual structure of the molecule to make it less immunogenic so that you didn't have the negative reaction. The other is to the vaccine itself. Interestingly, it was an earlier application, an earlier patent, that doesn't mention SARS-CoV-2. Mentions other related ones. So it'll be interesting to see, since every time you put your patent at risk by going into a courtroom, it can be invalidated, and then you don't have a patent. So I think that I would say that I can't handicap it, but I'd say they both have something at risk here. Okay.
Well, what makes this trial, this case, different from the other battles that Moderna is fighting, as you mentioned, in the US as well as Germany?
Well, I think just a different patent law in different countries. Similar, but different. And so we'll see how it plays out in the UK. You could win in the US and lose in the UK or vice versa. Right. So it's just a global sort of a work to try to figure out who deserves to get the royalties in each jurisdiction. Because clearly, as I said, if you win in the U.S., you get the U.S. sales, a royalty. You could lose in the U.K. and not get any royalty on those sales.
Okay, I see. Do you have any idea when we might actually expect a verdict here in this trial? And what would it mean for those companies going forward?
Well, obviously, if Moderna were to win, they'd be entitled to money and royalties from Pfizer, BioNTech, and so I think that it's supposed to be 28 days or something like that that the trial is going to last. The way these trials work, then the court has to come to a judgment. That judgment can be appealed, and so typically it takes a long time in patent law. It probably took them a while to get here to the trial, and then there'll be some time thereafter. I would surprise me if we really had an answer until maybe next year, but this depends on each country's judicial system, so it may be longer or shorter. One thing I will mention is that the European Patent Office that granted the patent that became the ones at issue has what's called an opposition going on, and in one of the patents, and I'm not sure which one, Moderna has lost that, and it is also on appeal, and the second one is just going in that proceeding. So there are many layers of the way this can shake out, having something to do with the trial, but these other fora that will look into the validity of the patents.
Okay, we'll have to wait and see. Thanks so much, Kevin. We really do appreciate it. That's Kevin Noonan, a lawyer at MBHB. Thanks so much.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.